just giving that information. All right, guys, welcome everyone to our webinar. This is actually the third webinar in a series that LenzVU is doing to help you streamline your business. And today we're going to be talking about enhancing your sales process. And the reason why we wanted to bring this to light today is because with a lot of clients that I use, either they developed a sales process maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and they kind of feel like it should be tweaked. The market has changed, things have changed post-pandemic, or maybe you're in a position where sales process was always something that you wanted to tackle, but with the myriad of things that you have to do as a studio owner, it never kind of got to the top of your priority list, and now you're in a position that you want to do it. So either way, our hope today is to be interactive. We're going to share some best practices and some value, shed some light on the subject so that you can walk away and go ahead and tackle this project. Because part of the sales process presentation that we're going to do, finding out the information, what to do with the information, and how to automate it in a non-generic way so that you can go ahead and communicate best with your prospective clients. Now, I'll be asking some questions during to keep it interactive. You can drop it in the chat, but if you're anything like me and you have a question and you're worried you're going to forget it, just drop it in the chat. We want to make sure that we get everything answered in the time that we're allotted. All right, just a few things about me. My name is Breaux Bradley. You can probably recognize it's my maiden name, but now I'm divorced and I'll decide if it's my last name, but that's another webinar. I'm from Southwest Louisiana, and I owned my own bar boutique franchise studio for about 4.5 years. I was getting in the groove of things, and then life hit me with breast cancer and something had to give. So I sold my business before I was ready to, but at the same time, it ended up being 6 months before COVID. So I think someone bigger was watching out for me. And I was approached very soon after by a couple of other studio owners to ask me if I would teach them everything that I knew. And I was very surprised and humbled that someone thought that I knew anything. And so I went through the Mindbody business consulting program. And all I need you to know about that is that I got a certification. I involved in the Mindbody One Champion program, but I have many clients on many platforms. And it's very important to me to go ahead and service my clients how that is. So we're going to get forward with our sales process. And what I wanted to start with was I'd be very curious about what your mindset is when it even comes to the word sales. Because as a studio owner myself, and what I hope to share is a lot of best practices that work for me, but more than that, what I find more effective are the things that I now look back upon, because you don't know what you don't know as a new business owner, and things that I wish I would have spent more time, done differently, or resourced out because it just drained too much energy from me that I could have better spent on other things. So I'm real curious if you want to drop in the chat, how many of you don't even consider yourself a salesperson because just the word makes you feel uncomfortable? Always get nervous. I hear you. I'm apparently very button happy here because I keep pressing things. So I was one of those people where sales made me feel very uncomfortable. I don't like putting myself out there and enticing someone to buy something. I want them to come to that place themselves. And also when I'm on the consumer side of it, it just kind of turns me off. So instead of thinking it about sales, what if you thought it about courting or just establishing that relationship, or better yet, giving yourself the opportunity to tell your story? If someone comes to your business to either ask a question, buy a drop-in, or commit to like a new client special, they are inviting you to educate them on your value. So as we go through this process, whatever your mindset is, think about telling a story and getting to know a person. That's all you're doing. So through this, we are going to work on what does it take to build the relationship with the clients, basically meaning what questions do you want to know from them? What do you want them to know about you? Using this information to enhance the customer experience. And we're going to get into this later because I think when it comes to sales process, the most important thing is to segment your message based on the information the client gives you. And then what do we need to do to put this process into place so that you can focus on Again, the myriad of other things you have going on, and this process is happening in the back. One other thing I want you to take from this, that was something for me to digest, is automation does not mean generic. There are generic automations out there, but when we're speaking specifically about the sales process and what the new client nurture campaign looks like, it does not mean generic. All right. Again, button happy. So we're going to start here with all of these availabilities to you, all of these mediums that are available to you in order to communicate with prospects, clients, you name it. Whether it's email, whether it's over the phone, whether it's a note card, or any social media platforms. You need to make sure, yeah. You need to make sure that you establish what the process looks like, along with a goal so that you can track it. So for instance, and again, we're going to get into a sample of the intake form. I had a client who was approached by Yelp, and Yelp wanted them to run an ad to be able to bring awareness to their studio and come back in. And she's like, I think I want to try this out. Great. How are we going to track that it's pulling in the money that you need to hit the goal that you've set for yourself to see if it's a success? And also, when you're dealing with all of these lead platforms, you need to make sure to meet your clients where they are. And that depends on who your avatar client is. So for those people who of a wiser, more mature age, they're probably not direct messaging you on Instagram. They're probably either going to email or have a phone call with you, where a lot of the younger generation, Instagram, Facebook, they're not about emails. So just keep that in mind as you're figuring out what mediums will work for your business, who your avatar client is, and the best way to connect with them. Now, as we get started, again, going back to mindset, these are some of the questions that I want you to think about before putting your sales process in place. We just talked about what mediums you would like to use. Secondly, we're going to talk about like how many touch points. Again, there are best practices, and I'm going to ask this question later, of how many touch points a person needs to make a purchase. That needs to be taken in consideration because it's probably going to push you a little bit out of your uncomfortable zone, or comfortability zone, we should say. On the flip side of that, you need to be able to stand in what you are going to reach out to them. So if there's any uncomfortableness and you're making a phone call because you've decided that's touch point 3 and you don't come across as confident, it probably would have been better if you didn't make that phone call. So we're going to get you out of your comfortability zone a little bit, but needing to know that there is a certain amount of value that you need to present to your clients, and it needs to be dripped over amount of time. Value, going back to what your story is. So yes, sales can be uncomfortable if you can't stand in it. Your value needs to be your story. Now that COVID has opened up the ability for people to do yoga anywhere in the world, why do I want to do yoga with you? So think about that when you are putting together your process, your emails, or whatever your communication is. You need to dig deep and speak to that emotional part of why people purchase something. I'm sure you can think of a commercial that you watched that kind of brought you to tears, and you probably don't even know exactly what they're selling, but if they would have asked you to buy, you would have pressed the button right there. You need to evoke those feelings, because with the shifts that have changed after COVID, where clients before were like, I need to find a health and wellness place so that I can lose weight, fit better in my clothes, or get tone. That shift is now to, I need to find a place where I find my community. I need to find a place so that I can gain mental clarity. So keep that in mind when you are deciding what to say or what to communicate. Whatever your core values are, really go there and be vulnerable and authentic and speak in your voice. Levers. I'm going to go over this in our sample, but levers, basically, I'm referring to upsells. So best practices says that when someone has started a new routine, it's usually between day 10 and 14 that they're feeling the groove. So you want to make sure in your process that by day 10 or 14, you have at least introduced an option to these prospects to be upsold into a higher price package or auto renew with a lever that they get that one shot at. I'm going to make sure to go through an example. Tracking the data. This is where LenzVU comes into play, and we'll get into that when Afi speaks about the benefits of tracking the data and how to do that. And then the last two, who needs to be aware of your sales process and who needs to own it? What I want to touch on this is I think it's very important after you've established your sales process, even if you're instructors, because I know when I hired my instructors, I just wanted them to teach the best product ever. I didn't want them to do anything else. At the same time, I wanted them to be able to speak intelligently to the process of going from walking in the door to becoming a client. So I wanted them to be aware of what it looks like. So if they get approached by a client, they can speak to it. And then who needs to own it? This obviously is a decision for you. When I first opened up my studio, I wanted to control everything because I wanted to make sure it was done the way that I wanted it to do. And I found out very quickly, it is very hard to master all of the tasks and be very good at them and not let them fall through the cracks. So if there is someone who is better suited to owning your sales process, making sure everything's running, and maybe that person isn't you, give some consideration to that, because in order for the sales process to be effective, it needs to be followed through. All right, so we're going to get going on what this is and the basic things I want you to keep in mind. We're going to get to know our client by figuring out what questions we want to ask. We're going to make a good impression by going ahead and using the information that we gather from our clients in order to speak directly to them in their words. And then we're going to put everything automated so that it's going back here and I can spend time on the other things that I have, but most importantly, building my community, especially again, after the past 2 years. So getting to know our client, what do we want to know and why do we want to know it? So there's some information that you're going to need to know. And I would like everyone to drop in the chat. What is the first question that comes to your mind when you are meeting a new client that you think is pertinent, necessary information? Because I kind of feel like there's two buckets. So I kind of want to see where we are with this. So drop in the chat just an example of a question you would ask either on a questionnaire or on an intake form of someone new visiting your studio. What are they doing right now? Christine, by that, do you mean like if they were exercising previously or in an exercise program now, what that looks like? Goals, yes, cool, love it. So in my head, I like to categorize the buckets of questions as one, there's like really necessary information that you need from someone who wants to visit your studio, like name, contact information, obviously payment information, maybe emergency contact. And then there's other information that I feel like need to know in order to better connect. Questions like you said, like what are your goals? How did you hear about us? What is your current activity level? Do you have any injuries? Those types of things. And it's that information that if you can get as detailed as possible, when you segment your emails to then communicate to them, you can use that information and you're speaking to them in their words. When we get to the intake form, I want you to take away with that I would advise not to ask open-ended questions. Be as detailed as possible. And if you can do anything in a multiple choice format so they can check it off, so you can gather all the information, sometimes works better. So the why in that you need this, it's essential to find out this information. It's going to help you with segmenting. It's obviously going to build stronger relationships. And it's going to boost the experience based on the client's needs. How do you gather the information that you need? Intake forms. Love these. LenzVU has figured out a way to make this process very seamless. I'm very curious as we get into intake forms, how many people here are A, using intake forms, or B, still using like a paper-based, like you go to the doctor's office and you have to fill out like 4 pages. And I know it's going to sound like I'm very mature and I walked to school uphill both ways in the snow, but that was totally my experience. Had a paper form that they had to fill out. Sometimes they didn't want to fill it out. And it just kind of created an awkward situation. So for LenzVU, they've created a seamless way to go ahead and not only gather the information, but then store it. So again, you can focus on building more connections. So here's the little picture of the little paper-based. And here's where we get into what information you want to find out. So at the beginning of the webinar, we're kind of talking about mindset and kind of figuring out what you want to know from your client. When you put together your intake form to gather that information, it's going to look something like this. Obviously, you don't want to have a 17-page sheet because nobody's going to pay attention to that. So you might want to kind of pull the most important things. And I'm going to use these two things, these two questions here as examples of intake forms that I use myself and that I've advised my clients. So the how did you hear about us, I think, is important for a couple of reasons. A, for you to figure out how people are hearing about you. So perhaps you can focus and spend more time there. So like I used before, I have a client who was approached by Yelp. They wanted to charge, I'm throwing numbers out there. Let's just say they wanted to charge $100 for 3 months of running an ad. She's like, I think I want to take advantage of this. Great. We need to figure out a way to track it to see if it is successful for something that you want to continue and invest your money in. So we put this on the intake form and we got very detailed about how they heard from it. So if after that 3 months we go back and absolutely nobody has checked in Yelp, then we know that's not where we need to spend our money. You can use that example for Facebook ads, whatever it is. Fitness goals, as some of you mentioned as an option, I think is very important for you as a studio owner to gain information, not only in how to connect with these prospective clients, but it could give you information that you might use as a different revenue stream. Perhaps you've noticed a lot of people are coming up with like mental clarity. What would it look like if you did a workshop on that? Different revenue stream, charged differently. You're speaking directly to that client based on the information that they gave you. Maybe they're looking for more community and social involvement. Therefore, note to self, we're going to have social gatherings once a month because a lot of our clients want that community. So this is what I'm going back to is very important for that thought process before to figure out what information you want to know from your client and get as detailed as possible. So it's not like other, and then you get 16 others and you have no idea what it's referring to. All right, making a good impression. Making a good impression. So the best way to make a good impression is this highlighted star at the beginning, which if you take nothing besides Lewis figuring out how to be able to talk and not see himself on the phone, is to give each client their own unique and memorable experience. And that comes from the information that you got from the intake form. And you can take this a myriad of ways. So does your client need additional help? Maybe there's someone that hasn't worked out in a while and they're very intimidated about walking in the studio, and you notice that that's something that they put on their intake form. Could you invite them in for a half an hour? Maybe it's a complimentary, like one-on-one, show them the space, talk about their injuries, talk about whatever it is that they need to feel more comfortable to walk in. Medical concerns. Obviously, this is something to take very seriously. You need to alert your staff on it. And perhaps it would be advantageous to approach them and make sure that their first class is of more the beginner basic series, where the instructor can go over with them modifications that they might need as they're working through it. Certain sessions, do they prefer? That's obviously a great segment that you can reach out to them on. Physical touch, hot button during COVID. What does that look like? I know at the Barre studio that I owned, the difference between a good class and a great class was hands-on adjustments. But I did have clients, for whatever reason, and it has nothing to do with you, that were not comfortable with that yet. It's important that you hear that and that you alert your staff so that they have the best experience possible. And obviously matching your service offering to the activity. When we go through the DRIP program, what I mean by that is, let's just say that you have a new client special that's 2 weeks. And Susan came in and Susan took class every day for the 2 weeks. It's a no-brainer that your option to offer them is going to be something unlimited. But if Susie came in and because she runs on Mondays and she bikes on Tuesdays and she does underwater basket weaving on Thursdays, it only leaves Wednesdays for her to come to your class. So she has come 2, maybe 3 times in that 2 weeks. If you were to offer her unlimited, she would think you didn't hear me. So you need to base it on the activity. Maybe what you offer her is a 3 times a month option or a 10 class pack that she has 3 months to use. Is it a little time consuming? Absolutely. But if you can meet your clients where they are and speak to them and give them their own unique, memorable experience, they are yours. All right. As we meet our clients where they are, and we're finding out about comfortability flags and reasons why they're here and what mode of medium to communicate to them, we then get to a place where we can ensure our clients are up to date on what's happening via the different social media platforms, or again, the mediums that you use. And the most important thing is to get us to segmenting the campaigns that keep them coming back. So when you're thinking about segmenting and building those campaigns that keep them coming back, I want you to think about describing to your clients their needs in their own words. I want you to think about using this time to identify if this is your ideal client. And if you've owned a studio for any amount of time, you know there are some people that walk in and there's a part of you that's like, you know what, if she canceled her membership, I just wouldn't cry. But gathering that information first can help you figure out what that win-win is. It makes you to ensure that you have all the information you need to guide the client effectively. For the example that I told you about unlimited, or maybe it's a class pack. And then it also puts you in a position where you can position your services wisely to them and helps to build the trust with the client and cultivate that you are an expert in what you're doing because you know what to suggest to them. So we're going to get into what a nurture campaign is, but what I want you to keep in mind that these nurture campaigns, I'm going to use the new client special as an example, but the clients that I work with, I cannot tell you how many nurture campaigns we have. It's because the journey does not stop when they become a client. It's kind of like dating. Like you don't take them to dinner, have a good time, and then never call them back and expect the relationship to continue, right? You have to nurture this. And how do you ensure that the guests feel supported throughout their entire experience? So that nurture campaign could look like made a profile but never showed up. That person would get a certain email that has certain information. And maybe that information is, I understand that starting a new program can be really intimidating, because they were interested enough to make a profile, but something happened for them to stop. Maybe it's a ClassPass segmented email because you've decided to go down that route and you want to communicate directly with these ClassPass people, A, to either have them keep coming back so you have some form of a revenue stream, or B, go, you know what, I've been dating all of these studios and I finally found the one that I want to stick with. Therefore, they go ahead and convert over. So just keep that in mind. We can do we miss you campaigns every 30 days. You've hit 10 classes, congratulations, or even just a basic nurture campaign for all your clients that just drips on them once a month about how important they are. Do you have feedback? Can you leave us a review? Anything like that. So this is the most exciting part. And if you have not been paying attention the whole time, here's where you need to pay attention. And I'll be really quick and to the point. So here's an example of what an email sales process campaign would look like. And I'm going to use what I did before of 2 weeks of unlimited access for $49. The reason why the 2 weeks is important is because you need to make sure that your campaign fills in those days of day 1 through day 14. So now I'm going to ask the question for you to drop in the chat. And how many points of contact do you think someone needs in a campaign for it to be effective to make a purchase? Go. Nice. Fatima says 8, Christine says 7, Lewis says 10. Here's the bottom line. I'm going to give you a best practices, which is going to be 8. But when you go through this process, you need to see how comfortable you feel, right? It doesn't need to be 1. It doesn't need to be 20, but it needs to be something that's effective. And the reason why it's effective is because of the structure that I've laid out before. You want to make sure that your sales process is not, hi, how are you? Buy this. Did you like your first class? Do you want to buy something else? Hey, I noticed it's ending. Do you want to buy something? You need to create value, like the example I said of dating. So maybe your first welcome email is, oh my God, congratulations on taking this first step. Because again, I don't want you to be standard. I don't want you to be automatic. I want to use your voice and be genuine, authentic, and vulnerable. And I say this from experience because I was the least vulnerable person you will ever meet. but I'm not saying I'm the most vulnerable now. I have worked on that. So your welcome email is basically going to say your first steps. Maybe it tells them what they need, like make sure to show up 15 minutes before, wear some grippy socks, bring a water bottle, parking is across the street. Then maybe 2 days later, and that's sent day one. And maybe 2 days later, it's like, you know what, here's some frequently asked questions that we always get from our students. What class to take first? How many classes should I take for this to be most effective? Or maybe it's even a breakdown of all the classes that you have that, describe them so they can choose. Then a couple of days later, they're getting into the groove, right? Maybe you have testimonials you've gathered from your clients so that they're hearing it from a different perspective. And one thing to note, these emails don't all have to be emails. Some of them, instead of pictures, you can use videos. Maybe some of these are communicated via text also. Maybe there's a note card that you write, which you might laugh, but that was so effective for me. If my person had not made the upsell by day 10 or in that window, I would send them a handwritten note telling them how much I enjoyed their presence and offering them a one-on-one to go over any questions that they had. That upsell, if you see right here, is in day 7, because again, this is a 2-week new client special. So I'm going to do my first upsell. And maybe in my upsell, I'm also going to include all the benefits that you get from my studio. If I have perks, if you get a percentage off of retail, and that first upsell is going to be the best deal that you're going to get. And I'm going to put that in there. And my upsell, the 2 common ones that I see are either a break in price on the first month to a committed auto pay, or maybe a lower price point overall if they commit before their new client special ends. If they don't take advantage of that, that's fine. We're still going because they still have another week to go ahead and get to know you. So maybe my next one is something inspirational, or maybe it's a recipe that highlights, or maybe it highlights something community that goes on to touch those people that were interested in community for joining. And then another email could be about your events and your perks and all of the stuff going on. And then your last email, which is usually the day before it expires, is another upsell, but it's not as good as the first one. And you can decide what that is based on the activity of the person that you are communicating with, all the information that they've given you in their intake form, so that you can speak directly to them. And those segments come in, again, can be automated, because after you create what your emails are, and you're now looking at, okay, I want to send an email campaign to everyone that talked about community. You create that campaign and you put all the emails that have to do with community that you feel good, and then it runs. Okay. And lastly, for me, because Affy's going to jump on, I realize I've been talking a lot. This is just an example, a client that I worked with, what we put together. Obviously, you want the aesthetic to look, but if you notice, nowhere on here is buy me, buy me, buy me. They've already purchased their new client special. We're courting. I'm talking to them about the classes I recommend. I'm talking to them the best time to sign up. And I'm even make it easier for them to just push a button and go ahead and sign up for class right away. So now you have all of the information. You thought about what you wanted to ask. You spent some time putting your intake form to go ahead and word the questions that you want to know. And now you've gathered all that information and you've used that to create what your emails say. How do you put it into place so that it's actually going to work for your business as you're focusing on more important things? So I'm going to turn it over to Affy just for a second.
All right. So as Steph mentioned, technically our focus from the technology side of things is how do we actually make that simple for you? So as Steph mentioned, let's say that you come up with your business process. So as an example, what she mentioned regarding the 10 classes, right, that you want to actually outreach to them after 10 classes. You don't necessarily want to keep track of, well, this person is at 8 and this person is at 6. We have technology that will help you do that. And that has been our focus. So from LenzVU, we have been working with studios in order to improve the client experience, the overall experience, as well as making things seamless and easy for the studio owners to do. So from their standpoint, we wanted to actually, again, overall improve the experiences and also take advantage of technology to automate something that otherwise would be manually done. And in that effect, I know right now we are doing a screenshot, but for example, you have the capability to keep track of, for example, we get a phone number associated with your account, and you can actually send and receive text messages using that phone number. So that's automatically added to your account. The great thing about it is that you can connect now to your clients through, for example, text messages, through email, as well as what we are going to be adding is the capability for you to automate even voice messages, right? So as an example, if you have older clients, right, they might not necessarily be on text messages right away, or they might not necessarily be checking emails, right? In that situation, you want to enable that communication via voice. Whereas if it's a younger crowd, right, text messages will work better. If it's somebody like me, emails likely will work best, right? So, we are providing that capability for you to communicate to your clients effectively. And I'm going to actually say effectively because there are different ways, there are different preferred means of communication. And for us, our focus is to make sure that the communication is effective with your clients. So again, we have, if we go to the next slide, we have even the capability that you can now, for example, automate flows that, for example, let's say that you want to send a text message or an email after the person came to their first class, right? And say thank you. Or if you want to, if somebody has actually canceled a class, you want to give them an option to rebook a class. So there are a lot of flexibilities that we have enabled into our tool that now you can, once you have that process defined, right, you can now take advantage of technology for the technology to technically, it's like cruise control for the technology to technically allow for the sales process to take effect, right? So from that aspect, that's where we are coming in. And one thing I want to also assure, this is a conversation that we have with all our clients, is that as part of our commitment to make your clients' experiences that much better, we also will work with you to actually make sure that your experience, that you are set up correctly. If you have any questions, anything else, we also work with the clients directly. A lot of the features, a lot of for example, the new changes that are being implemented are because of those direct conversations that we have with the studio owner. So from our aspect, that's something that we work very closely with the studio owners to improve our software, as well as make sure that it is something that they absolutely can use and benefit from in order to improve overall experiences within their studios. And here is a screenshot of our flow. You can actually, again, generate different flows that you want. You can, we have a number of different integrations, anything from like if somebody wants to check into a class that gets marked on Mindbody. We are a partner with Mariana Tech. We have a lot of different integrations within our software, and you can take advantage of that, so that providing that holistic, overall seamless experience to the client that now has a built-in automation to improve and also make sure that, for example, certain things like, for example, sales, I want this email to go out after, for example, X number of days or X number of classes. You can also automate that as well. Okay, back to you, Steph.
I know we went over time just a little bit, so I appreciate everyone being here. basically just want to leave it with, as a consultant, I work independently with LenzVU, and part of our partnership is to helping with the pain points. Like Afi said, a lot of the integrations of the sales process and the automation are very interactive conversations to see what do you need to make your business run seamless. So as part of that, whether you have a question about the sales process, whether you need help drafting the emails, I actually saved all of my campaigns and I use them a lot with my clients, just because a lot of times I find it very hard to know what to start with when looking at a blank page. So sometimes a template of some sort helps you get started. Here's my information. If you want to go to my website, I'm offering everyone, I do a free coffee and conversation. Although depending on the day, sometimes it's whiskey and the coffee, but we all know how those go. To go over whatever it is that you need for the strategy of your studio, to see if there's a fit in LenzVU, whatever that looks like, or if there's something totally off topic you want to talk about. Go ahead and take advantage of that opportunity. As well as if you want a demo for LenzVU to kind of walk through, because I know a lot of times as a studio owner, you're like, I can't possibly take on something else. I myself am a kinesthetic learner, so I have to go through it to figure out if it works for me. And before we end, I just want to open it up. If anybody has any questions or things that they would like to share or feedback on the webinar in general, we would love to hear it. Christine might still be putting her toddler to sleep. Lewis might still be eating, I'm not sure. And Andrea, we'd love to hear from you. If not, look for your follow-up emails to go ahead and connect with us. Oh, we have someone chatting. Very helpful approaching napness. Thank goodness. I feel you, girl. The replay will be sent out if you need to kind of go ahead and take notes without a kid screaming.
Stephanie, I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
Well, first off, thank you. That was absolutely amazing. I took lots of notes. I really enjoyed everything you said.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it was really helpful. You guys have great energy and you sound like you really know your stuff for sure. I wanted to ask you, so one thing that I love that you said was like people start to get really into their program around day 10 to 14. I was planning on giving a free month, I'm planning on doing fitness challenges that connect with an app. And I pay for the price of the client for the month. But I was thinking of only giving them, say, 2 weeks, or maybe like after, like my question is like, do you think I should give them a full month of a fitness challenge? Like I'm thinking that there'll probably be like a 1 week onboarding process where the client joins and they get like a welcome information and how to use the app and what to expect. And then maybe week 2, the challenge would actually start. And maybe it's a 2-week challenge.
So Lewis, one thing you need to know about me is I don't sugarcoat.
Yeah.
And I'm always direct. And I would highly advise you not to do anything free, especially for that long. But if we were to have a discussion about it and it was something you were really passionate about, I think there is a way to work the system as long as you have an effective sales process to make sure that that communication is going on. And my reason for saying not free is a couple of things. I think there's a certain amount of ownership that a consumer takes when they pay something.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
So maybe it is you put together this program, you start dripping about it early, and you put together like early bird pricing. That's like 2 weeks. You can get this for a discount to walk through. Or maybe it is like you say, you get a whole month for the price of 3 weeks, because the first week is the onboarding process type of thing. And as long as there's some sort of upsell, so that you're communicating with them as they're going through the month, and when you really see the groove going, to go, oh my God, you know, you're seeing all of these changes, effects, this is great. You need to make sure that you upsell them early, or at least give them what their options are to continue.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's great information. Thank you. That's really
I just
good.
feel like there's going to be a lot of work that's going on your end. And if someone has something free, they're not like, oh my God, I don't have to show up because I'm not leaving any money on the table. And therefore, their impression of your program is not all it's meant to be, because they didn't get anything out of it, but it wasn't because of lack of what you did. It was because of lack of commitment on their end.
Yeah, that's great advice. That's exactly what I'll do. I'll make
Yeah.
I'll make a very attractive offer for people to join when they're paying something. But how about say like a client?
But real quick to that, the way that you market it is I would do it different ways to track what speaks. So do some marketing where they're still geared towards the same purchase, but maybe it's like buy 1 week, get 3 weeks free, or buy 3 weeks and get 1 week free, or early bird pricing. Like there could be a lot of different ways to market it, and you measure to see which one clicks with people.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
Well, I'm sorry, I interrupted you. You said you had another.
Well, yeah,
part of that
I
question.
wanted to give I was using another fitness app, and it just like this one woman, she had to print out all her workouts when I left the app because there's no way. And I wanted to say, give some maybe past clients, like maybe some free sessions or free, get them involved for free.
Start thinking your mindset to promotions
Okay.
and not like free or sales. So it could be where your members always get some sort of perk. Like part of a perk of being your member is to get 20% off workshops or something like that, where you increase the perks. So it's a no-brainer that someone wants to follow you and be a member because they're going to get all of this value. But to my point that I made earlier, like shifting the mindset, because there's been so much free value out there. You have a value of what you bring to the table. And I want you to stand in that value. I mean, it's kind of like using the example, the woman goes shopping for a purse and it's the same person wants $30 and what's $60. I am not automatically going like, oh my God, I'm going to get a deal and get the $30 one. I'm thinking, what am I missing if I get the $30 one and not the $60 one? So there's a whole like mindset that, yep.
I like that. I like that. That's amazing. Thank you for that.
Oh, no problem. All right. Well, we're going to stop the recording. There'll be some follow-up emails, but again, if you want to screenshot or take this and reach out to Affy or myself, again, if there's anything that you want to talk about, our goal here is to bring value and make your life a lot easier because let's be honest, you've been through hell the past 2 years.
Yeah.